Welcome back to API Test Hub. This is part 6 of our API testing series. In our previous video, we learned about the API testing tool Postman. In today's video, we are going to learn the most important concept in API testing, that is API security. So let's begin. So the first question is, what exactly is API security and why should we care? Just like locking your door at night, securing your API is essential to prevent unauthorized access and protect your data. This brings us to the two most important concepts, authentication and authorization. Now let's dive into these two concepts, authentication and authorization. So the authentication, what it is. So let's learn about it. Think of authentication like showing your ID at the airport. It proves who you are. Similarly, when you log in into your online accounts using a username and password, that's authentication. In API testing, we need to ensure that only authorized users are making requests, and that's where authentication comes in. Now, the authorization, on the other hand, is like the gatekeeper who decides whether you can enter the VIP lounge or you just wait at the regular gate. Authorization, however, is deciding what the authenticated user is allowed to do. For instance, after logging into your shopping application, you might be authorized to view products and place an order, but not able to add or delete those products, right? So, in the same way, APIs ensure that authenticated users have the right permissions for different actions. So that is the concept of authentication and authorization. Next comes, what are the common methods of doing this authentication? So there are various ways to authenticate users in an API. So some APIs use an API key while others may ask for your username and password. A popular method is Auth method, which issues tokens to access the API. So we will learn all of these methods in detail. So let's begin that. Let's start with the simplest method, basic authentication. It's one of the oldest and most straightforward methods. In basic authentication, the user's credentials like username and password are sent in the HTTP request authorization header, usually encoded in base64. But this basic authentication is not recommended for production because it's not very safe, because it's exposing username and password. Although it's encoded, but it's really easy to decode this base64. That is why it is usually not used in production. So let's see how it looks, how the call with basic authentication looks in Postman. Let's see the demonstration now. So this is my Postman and I have already created all the requests for the demonstration. So let's begin with basic authentication first. So here I'm using some open source available, like free to use APIs that I'm using it here. So then let's start the demonstration. So what here we are using is, this is the get API call I'm making, and to access this particular call I have to authorize myself. I have to do the authentication process, and here I'm doing the basic authentication. So what you have to do is, you can see the different tabs here, right? So this authorization is the one where you can use for basic auth method. So what you can do is, you can select the basic auth here and it will say that provide username and password, and for this particular API I'm passing user as a username and password as pass. So what it will do, it will check, the server will check the credentials and grants access if they match. So if they match with the server details, so it will allow me to go there. So let's see what happens when I do the send. So What it has done is it has granted me the access. It says that you are authenticated user. So this is the easiest and the most simplest way to do the authentication. So this is basic auth. You don't need to do any separate call. You just need to pass the username and password inside your own API call. So this is basic authentication. Let's move to the next method. Now, let's explore JWT bearer token authentication. It is more modern and secure method. This method uses a token, typically a JWT, to authenticate the user. Once you log in with your credential, the server generates a JWT which contains the user information and roles. This token is then used in the authorization header of every API request to verify the user's identity. So let's see how it looks when you are actually making the call to it and making your API as an authenticated user. Let's see through the Postman. So here what you have to do is first you need to make a first call to get the token. So that will be a JWT token. So here we are passing in the body. So this is my call going. This is again the open source API is available and I'm using this for demonstration purposes. So this is the post call first I'm making to this particular API, and in that API I'm passing the username and password. So what you have to do is just send it. So what it will do, it will provide me a token. So this is the first JWT token call. So I'm not going to directly going to my get request. First I need to have a token, because if I don't have a token, it won't allow me to go in. So I'll get 401 error if I don't have a valid token. So first call I'm going to make is the token call. So here you will get the token. So what I will do is I'll copy this token, and what I have to do is if I have to make a get call, so to get the card details, I have to go here, and in the headers tab you can add the authorization header. I have explained this in my previous videos. So you can come and add the authorization header, and in the value you have to write bearer, bearer, bearer space the token which was generated from the previous call, and you just need to paste that token value. And once you do that, it will authorize you. You will be authenticated to access this particular API. So once I send it, I will be able to access this. I am getting 200 OK as back response. So this is a two-step method. First you need to make a call to get the token, and to get the token you need to pass some username and password. You will get the token, and once you get the token, go to your particular API. In the headers, pass this authorization header, and in that authorization you have to put bearer and place your token there. So this way you can authenticate your particular API. So I hope this has cleared what the JWT token is. Next, so now let's look at Auth 2 authentication. So what it is a secure way to authenticate users without exposing their credentials. So it is one of the most widely used authenticated methods, especially in third-party integrations. So this Auth 2 is a delegated authorization system. So instead of handling usernames and password directly, Auth allows a user to grant permission to a third party application to access their resources without sharing login credentials. So what actually happens is, here the user grants a permission to the application, and the application receives an access token that is used to access the API. So let's look in the Postman how it's actually happening. So here as well you will be having two calls. So here what you have to do is you just need to pass the email and password here, the few credential. What it will do, instead of the full-fledged token, you will get something like this. you will get a key that is also a token. So what it will do, you need to copy this and you need to pass this to your request. So again, similarly as a JWT, here you need to pass the authorization and the key without the bearer. So whatever key you are getting from here, you just need to copy and you need to pass it here. And once you do that, you can get information about that API. As 200 OK I'm getting back. So this is again the free API I'm using. So what I'm doing here is we are just passing some details in the body of email and password, and it's giving me back the token, which is something like this. So I'm using this token in my, again in the get call, and when you come here in the get call, you in the authorization header, you need to pass that value. So I'm not passing bearer here, you are just passing the value, and once you do that, you can just send it, and your request will be you will be authenticated and you will get the response back. So this is auth token. So it's very common and it's being used by most of the services. So now let's move to API key authentication. Now in this method, the client sends a unique key in the request header or URL to authenticate, and the server validates that key and allows access if it's valid. So API authentication is very simple to implement, but it doesn't offer the same level of security as the other methods like JWT and Auth offers. So it is actually used in public APIs mostly, which has limited access to some specific resources. So let's see how it works. So this API key is like a unique identifier which is passed as part of the request. So let's see how it looks. So again, this is the open source website I'm using here. So I'm trying to access the API, the endpoint with V1 codes. So what happens is, this is a website, it provides me an key. Let me show you how it looks. So this is an API, and this is, sorry, in a website which provides me a API key to access some of its APIs. So what I'm doing is I'm accessing its API v1 codes, and in the header what you have to do is you have to provide X API key header. So that will be a fixed value, X API key, and in there you have to provide this API key. So once I do that, I can directly go and do a send call, and I can see that I'm getting back the result of port with 200 OK response. So here you are just giving the key. You are not generating any token before that and then passing it somewhere. You are just using the key, which is a unique identifier inside the header, and you are getting back the response. So this kind of authentication usually happens to the public APIs, which doesn't have more security, which are publicly available. So that is why this is used. It's not more secure. So more secured APIs must have this JWT or Auth 2 token, and this one is generally for public APIs only. So that is about API keys authentication. So these were all the methods of API security, and we will be implementing one of these methods in our product application as well. And I'll demonstrate how I'll do that application and how we can test that, and when we are getting 401 and 403 error, if you remember from our previous videos. So that was all about API security, and if you have any question, you can let me know in the comment section and I will cover those in more detail if you want. And in the next upcoming video, in the part 7, we will be covering about the functional testing, and we will start testing our products application. And I have already started one series on creating products application using Spring Boot. If you have missed that, go and watch it. I'll post the description in the box there below down here. So that's all about today's video. Thank you so much. Keep learning and keep growing. Thank you.